Hi, class. Today we are going to continue our discussion on President Bill Clinton, and we're going to be talking mostly about Clinton's second term in office. Yesterday in our live class, we talked about Bill Clinton's first term and just a little bit on the background of President Clinton. So today we're going to hit some highlights and some low points in Bill Clinton's career. And generally, every president has high points and low points in their career. For Jimmy Carter, as we've talked about recently, the low point would have been the Iran hostage crisis, as far as just something unresolved that really plagued his administration for more than the last year of his administration, right? For George W. Bush, whom we'll talk about in the coming days, the low point in his career, one could argue 9/11 was a low point, but I would say that he rose to the occasion, and it might have been a horrible incident in America, but that was really a high point in his career where he stepped up and he led America during a difficult time. But the low point in George W. Bush's career, I think, was the 2007-2008 housing crisis, which was the tail end of his administration, and the economy had been doing really well, and it dropped off, and the stock market crashed. I mean, it lost about 50% of its value at one point. It didn't stay down, but so I would say that would be a low point in George W. Bush's career. In Clinton's career, we'll talk about the low points, but first I want to talk about some things that President Clinton had accomplished during his time in office, and some of them are things that other presidents hadn't been able to accomplish when they were in office, and some of them are still in effect to this day. So, one thing that Bill Clinton really, I think, was a higher point in Bill Clinton's career was that he was able to accomplish not just balancing the budget, but he was able to accomplish a budget surplus in our nation. So in 1998, America experienced its first budget surplus in quite some time, where instead of spending more money than was budgeted, and instead of spending more money than we had received in taxes, actively spending, I should say, because I'll get to there's a caveat here on this budget surplus, but instead of that, we actually had more revenue than we spent. So America spent less than was budgeted and spent less than tax revenue came in, which it doesn't happen very often. If you look at Reagan's career, George H.W. Bush, and even most of the Clinton years, we didn't do that, but Clinton accomplished something most presidents hadn't. If you look at George W. Bush's career, Obama's career, Trump's career, we're big in deficit spending. We generally run a budget deficit, but Bill Clinton was able to run a budget surplus through his proposed budget. Obviously, Congress has to approve it, but the president helps drive the budget as well. However, the national debt did still increase that year, and that's largely due to interest on the national debt. Our national debt does accrue interest largely because we sell bonds. Our debt is something that we monetize, and we sell bonds based on our national debt, and we promise interest on those bonds. So then when people cash in those bonds, we are responsible to pay them extra. So the debt increased because of interest. Same with any other loan. If it's unpaid, interest accrues, and that causes more value to be placed in the negative on that loan. But anyway, budget surplus, great win for the Clinton administration. Something else William Jefferson Clinton did was he pushed for, and Congress approved, a $500 per child tax credit on people's income taxes. So kind of like if you looked at the stimulus under the Trump administration during this COVID pandemic, there was an additional dividend that was paid. It was $500 per child. So it was $1,200 per individual, obviously making under a certain threshold, and then $500 per child in that household was part of the stimulus package. Similarly, Bill Clinton pushed for a $500 child tax credit per child in a household just to help ease the burden on taxpayers. Also, something that he did was pushed very hard for Congress to ban cigarette ads targeting minors. Now, this can get into kind of the more shady end of business or the more unscrupulous side of business, but minors were a major consumer of tobacco products in the 90s, and Clinton thought that that was a major issue, and it was. And part of the problem that was occurring is that ads were being placed in such a way as to target minors. Like the ad itself was structured in such a way to reach out to minors, even though they might say, in fine print, smoking is illegal, tobacco products are illegal unless you're under 18. Currently, now it's 21 in our state. But the reason some of the ads have been switched over time and why certain publications can't carry ads that are promoting tobacco products is because of that fact that Clinton pushed for this and got that. And one other thing that the Clinton administration accomplished, and you guys can discuss whether you think it's a good thing or not, but CHIP health insurance, and that is insurance for children in families that make under a certain threshold of income. And that threshold can be surprisingly high, but as far as partial or total coverage. But this is something that Clinton pushed for because he thought that the children in our nation deserved health care, and not all families can afford that. And so he pushed for CHIP to be passed, and CHIP still exists to this day. Same with tobacco advertising regulations exist to this day. So some of the things that Clinton had accomplished are long-term things that his administration affected and that still are in force to this day. Now let's get to some of the not-so-great parts of the Clinton administration. First of all, while Clinton was president, something came out about Whitewater development. It was the Whitewater scandal. And the Whitewater scandal, the claim was, and this was investigated, the claim was that while Bill Clinton was governor, because as is the case with many presidents, Bill Clinton was a governor. Ronald Reagan, governor of California, Jimmy Carter, governor of Georgia, Bill Clinton, governor of Arkansas. So we see it's the case, George W. Bush, right, governor of Texas. We see this with a lot of presidents where they were a governor at some point in time. Well, while Bill Clinton was governor, he was accused, when he became president, it came out that he may have helped arrange illegal loans using his power as governor for a company called Whitewater Development. Now, this was never demonstrably proven. It was an accusation. And an accusation's only as good as the proof, but it does make America suspect. And then later, on the heels of the Whitewater accusation, then Bill Clinton is accused of having an affair with one of his interns. Well, Bill Clinton denied these accusations under oath, and then the accusations are substantiated. So it turns out that Bill Clinton committed perjury, and so he's going to be impeached for this. And this is really the low point in Bill Clinton's career, impeachment, where Bill Clinton is brought up on charges by the House. That's how impeachment works. The House of Representatives impeaches. It's just being charged with a crime. That's all it is. So he's charged with the crime of perjury and of obstruction. And then the Senate holds the trial. The Senate votes. They're the jury. They vote whether or not to convict. If they convict, the president is removed from office and the vice president steps into the role as president. Well, as was the case, as we talked about yesterday with Andrew Johnson, he was impeached, not removed from office. Bill Clinton, impeached. All it means is he's charged with a crime. It doesn't mean that he's committed it. It doesn't mean that he's found guilty. And he was not found guilty by the Senate. The vote was 55 in favor of removal from office. You need a supermajority. You need 2/3. So they fell short of that. On the case of perjury and on obstruction, it was 50-50. So neither charge received the full amount of votes that it needed in order to remove the president from office. So Bill Clinton, there was pressure, by the way, there were calls for Bill Clinton to resign over the affair and over the charges that were pending, and he refused to resign. And he weathered the storm and stayed in office. And so if he would have resigned, he would have been the second president ever in American history to resign from office, but he did not do that. And so he was the second president ever in American history to be impeached. So after that, in to 1999, we have the Kosovo incident. Now, I'm not really covering Bosnia in great detail, but there was Bosnia and Kosovo. I'm just going to choose Kosovo. We'll get into Bosnia in AP US history if you take AP US history. So in Serbia, there are two ethnic groups in Serbia. They're the Serbs and they're the Albanians. And the Serbs were persecuting the Albanians living in Kosovo, Serbia. And Bill Clinton had pushed back against this, and the Serbs were not listening. So, using Tomahawk cruise missiles, Bill Clinton and NATO forces bombed Serbia into compliance. And some people felt this was a distraction from all the negative press Bill Clinton was getting for his impeachment trial. But it was a real problem, and Bill Clinton did address it. But we can argue whether or not the timing of that was such a way to take pressure off of him. I'm not making a judgment on that. But that was something where he received both positive and negative press for. Positive for defending the Albanians, negative because people thought it was just distracting from the negative press for impeachment. And another thing that was really a problem was Israel and the Palestinians were having major issues. And there was a lot of tension, there was some violence. And so Clinton tried to arrange peace talks with Israel and the PLO, who represented the Palestinians. Well, the peace talks failed. Israel was willing to make concessions, major land concessions to the PLO, and the Palestinians decided not to take those concessions and just refused to finish the negotiations, which kind of left Bill Clinton looking like he had failed the negotiations. Now, there were three parties involved, America as the mediator, and then the Palestinians and the Israelis, but that was something that really seemed like an unresolved issue, whereas Jimmy Carter was able to have the Camp David Accords with Israel and Egypt and have a peace agreement settled. Bill Clinton was not able to accomplish that in his administration. One last thing that's going to build up into the George W. Bush administration, Bill Clinton also bombed Iraq. In 1996, the Iraqis were targeting Kurds who were living within the Iraqi borders, and to stop that, Clinton ordered the bombing of strategic military targets in Iraq. Very limited bombing. But it just shows that even though we had the Iraq War and Saddam Hussein was under sanctions and was under really, he had to follow through with a lot of stipulations for the peace agreement that we had. He's not meeting those at all. And so it's going to lead to tensions under the Bush administration. Clinton already, we just talked about bombed Iraq, but we're going to actually have the full-blown Iraq war, partially for Iraq not following sanctions and stipulations of the peace agreement, and partially because of suspected weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So that's the Clinton administration. We talked about first term yesterday. Today we're talking about second term. Some good things, some not so good things, but by and large, the Clinton administration is one of those administrations that had its challenges and had its successes. And we can continue the discussion in coming days, but I really appreciate you watching, and I appreciate all the hard work you all have been doing throughout this year. Keep it up. We're getting there. Less than a month left, and finish strong, guys. All right, have a great day.